We now know the ceasefire between Israel and Iran is still in effect, according to President Trump, even though first thing this morning, the president accused both sides of violating it.
Joining us right now is history professor and academic director of the Center for the Global Gulf, Ibrahim Al-Marashi. Ibrahim, good morning. Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Help us understand what exactly happened since the ceasefire was originally announced by President Trump. You heard him, what he said to the media. He was upset about what had happened. Explain and put it into perspective for us, if you could.
Well, it was quite surprising because he seemed more upset at Israel than Iran for violating it. So during that press conference, he said apparently Iran fired a missile. It might have been an accident. It didn't land or was intercepted, and that Israel overreacted by striking Iran again. So the onus was placed on Netanyahu's government instead of the Islamic Republic, which is quite a surprising shift in terms of American foreign policy and Trump's foreign policy.
You know, we heard reaction from the president earlier this morning. Obviously, he was upset when he talked to the media. I'm sure you heard what he said about both sides, how they've been fighting for so long and that they don't know what they're doing, is how he put it mildly. What are we learning about how both sides are reacting?
Well, for the first, the Islamic Republic originally said we haven't accepted the ceasefire, number one, or they might be playing Trump's game. Remember, Trump was more or less negotiating with Iran and then struck the U.S., which hasn't really happened in international relations since Japan was negotiating with the U.S. and it struck Pearl Harbor. So basically, Iran might have said, you know, we're adhering to the ceasefire and then might have violated it to play Trump's game, or in fact, it was a mishap, an accident, or the Israelis misread a rocket fire and then retaliated disproportionately. It's still too early to tell.
What do you expect, given your expertise, moving forward? And I would ask the next several weeks or months, but honestly, at this point, the next few hours, the next day or two?
You know, I would say any Middle East expert, if they say they know what's going to happen, they're misleading you. That is a good Middle East expert admits humility with the region. But so I can tell you this is repeating what happened after the U.S. assassinated an Iranian general in January 2020. Everyone expected World War III to break out. The U.S. took a barrage of Iranian missiles at an Iraqi base. It would seem to be a calibrated, orchestrated response between Iran and the U.S. They de-escalated via Twitter, and that was it. Both sides were able to save face. It seemed that's where we were yesterday until the ceasefire was broken. And it's for that reason, it's hard to tell. All three sides, Israel, Iran, and the U.S. want to save face. They're looking for some kind of safe-facing measure. How is that achieved? That has to be and we have to wait and see.
But Ibrahim, do you think that the U.S. could perhaps get more involved if more attacks were to happen?
The U.S. could get more involved, but it would achieve little. In this sense, unless the U.S. is going to send ground forces into Iran, there's no way, never in history has a sophisticated nuclear program like this been taken out by the air. It took, in the Iraqi case, the entire Gulf War to take out Saddam's program, but then it followed by an American ground invasion and UN inspections. So really, for the nuclear program to be eliminated, that's what the U.S. has to do. And I don't think the Trump administration or the Americans can countenance another ground invasion of a Middle Eastern nation. I really think that all these airstrikes over the weekend from the U.S. side were morally symbolic, Trump trying to project strength.
And we've heard of that saving face on all sides, where Iran calls the U.S. or calls and says, we're going to do this, and then they kind of prepare, but it's about saving face. It's about pride for the country, for the leadership. I've heard from Putin has made statements, China has made statements, Pakistan has made statements. So when you take the safe face philosophy, and then you take all these other countries chiming in, how is the rest of the world supposed to look at that and not panic?
Well, the world definitely has reason to panic for the very simple phenomena of filling your car at the pump. So in other words, gas prices have gone down, but this continuous fluctuation has the potential of sending the prices rising again. That's going to have a global effect on the economy. And everything is so tense. Everyone's finger is on the trigger. So, I mean, the world should panic. Most of the world's energy comes through a narrow artery through the Persian Gulf, and there's good reason to panic.
The president is saying that the U.S. is not seeking a regime change in Iran. What are your thoughts?
Regime change in Iran is basically, I think, just not possible at this point because, ironically, by striking Iran, you've gotten the population to rally behind the government. I think Israel had hoped that the strikes would foment a popular uprising. The opposite has happened. And both, they forgot history. The U.S. and Israel forgot history. When Iraq invaded Iran in 1980, the Iraqis thought the same thing. People would rise up against the Islamic Republic. The Iranian nation ended up rallying behind the Islamic Republic, not out of love of the Ayatollahs in charge, but there's a strong sense of Persian nationalism, and we underestimate how profound Persian nationalism is. And so that's why a regime change is unlikely. It really created a rally around the flag effect.
Lastly, I want to ask you, you mentioned humility. If you're a historian and expert in the region, I want to ask you, what about a resolution? Are we going to see that anytime soon and get back to some sort of whatever the stability was maybe just a few months ago, a year ago, whatever it was? Can we have that?
Sure. As a historian, why be humble? Because this is a conflict that goes back to 1953. In 53, the newly created CIA overthrew a democratically elected government, and we're facing the repercussions of that act to this very day. That's where I say we have to realize this conflict in the Iranian mind goes back to the 1950s. And so for that reason, when you ask for resolution, we're talking about resolution for a conflict that did not begin over the weekend. This goes back decades. And for that reason, resolution will only occur when the crimes, the sins of the past are acknowledged and addressed. The problem is on the U.S. side, there's a short memory, failure to appreciate in the Iranian mind how far this goes back. So resolution is quite elusive. You might have an end to the fighting, but that doesn't mean you're going to have a resolution of those deep-seated feelings.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually.
And what happened 75 years ago was to protect Western oil interests.
British Petroleum, correct.
Even back then. Ibrahim, it's a pleasure speaking with you, sir. Thank you for taking the time from Rome. Thank you.
My pleasure.